Start the interrogation.
All right. I just start with telling about it when you were a little kid. I mean, what we remember. I mean, Dad, you, both of you guys. I mean,
Go ahead, Dad. Born in
I was a little kid once.
1931.
You grew up in San Francisco, right?
I was born in San Francisco on Staples Street, out by City College. And
And that was 36?
31.
31.
I don't know anything about 36.
And so basically, in terms of 31, so you lived through, that was Depression, right? Was that the Depression, 31?
Yeah, but I was quite young through those years.
Yeah.
And the Depression was an effective way of the government distributing some food and clothing.
Because your dad was a
He had a good job.
elevator mechanic or something like that.
Yeah, he worked for Otis Elevator. And he was a supervisor, worked on the Golden Gate Bridge, and used to periodically check the condition of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Those towers.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, so he was. So you think that because he had a good job, the Depression didn't really affect you guys that much?
Yeah, I think
So you guys did pretty well going through the Depression.
yeah.
But you, on the other hand, was a little different, right? Growing up in Fortuna,
No, Eureka.
Eureka.
But see, I'm a little bit younger than he is, so it was just the end of the Depression. So, times are hard, people didn't have jobs, and my father worked for the WPA at one point, and, just to earn a living, which WPA was where they built bridges and did all of this. But yeah, there wasn't any money. People were just coming out and they didn't have anything. So you learn to appreciate what you had. My father, when I was a little girl, he used to say to me, be thankful that you have a roof over your head and 3 square meals a day. And he said that enough to me that I believe it. I
Mhm.
think you should be thankful if you have a roof over your head and you have 3 square meals a day. Be very thankful and grateful for it, because a lot of people during that time sure didn't have it.
I'll check on you later about that.
And the WPA was the
I don't
Roosevelt. It was a
Yeah.
work program that Roosevelt put in effect
Right,
to get people working.
right. And we'd get a package, like, I don't know how often it was, but there'd be like clothes in it for my brother and clothes for me, and I don't know what I was only interested in what came for me. And I'd get like 2 dresses, like I remember one time one was pink and one was green, and they were check polka dot dresses exactly alike. And I got 2, one of each. And that was, I guess you probably got like underwear and maybe towels or something. I don't remember exactly what you got, but I do remember that I always liked the dresses.
Because they didn't have any yellow ones, huh?
But you didn't get anything like that, did you? But your parents worked hard. They had not only you 5 children, but they had your
I'm one.
invalid aunt, your 2
Right.
uncles that lived with them. And so during that time, when you were little, it was, the war came on, the Second World War, and you had to have stamps in order to buy shoes or flour or coffee or rice. Nylons were impossible. So I really think
I
that
didn't wear none.
I think that your family, because there were all these older ones living there, they probably kind of pooled their stamps, and you kids probably had, probably enough or whatever. I mean, we had enough, but It was a very difficult time, but it was, really learn to appreciate what you had. I think doesn't happen now so much
Mm-hmm.
in this age.
So you grew up in Eureka, and Dad, you grew up in San Francisco, and you didn't know your grandparents, Dad?
I knew my grandmother,
Your
Jenny.
Jenny,
Jenny, and now she's the one. That's your mom's mom.
no.
No,
Father's mother.
my father's mother.
Oh, your father's mother's named Jenny.
Yeah,
Ah, and they were from Iowa.
yeah.
They came out
She
here.
had two sons. One was a policeman in San Francisco, Chinatown, and he passed away. And the other son was my father.
Huh. So they had two sons. I saw that they came out here in 1890 from Iowa, probably on the train to San Francisco. And your grandfather was a bridle maker.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, yeah, leather shop downtown on Van Ness Street.
He did?
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
No.
Huh. So he passed away before you were born?
Yes.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. And then, so Jenny, you remember her then?
Yeah, I do.
What kind of person was she?
She was a little old lady.
You don't have many memories about her then?
Not too many, just that we used to go over there on the weekend, on Sunday, after church, to see her. And she'd be raising little turnips or things in her backyard. She had a big garden where she cultivated plants.
Hmm.
Didn't she have apartments in San Francisco?
Flats.
Flats. Oh.
She owned flats in San Francisco.
Oh, she did? So she was a landlord.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. She must have done pretty well. Well, what else do you remember when you were a kid? Anything else about your family? Your mom and dad, what's going on with them and your brothers?
I had 3 brothers and a sister.
Yeah.
About you honked your brother's horn and took off. Remember when?
Well, I go through the boys. The oldest son was Joe, who was very astute in all things. He was the president of his class in school, got straight A's, did everything right, the perfect son. Then there was Bob, who was sort of a roughneck. He was the second son, and he was on the crew team for St. Ignatius. We all went to St. Ignatius High School. And then there's Jack, who had a tendency to get into trouble and misbehave. And then there was Betty and my sister, who went to I can't remember the name of the school now. Presentation in San Francisco. Bob and Joe, when the war broke out, both enlisted in the Merchant Marine, and they were converted into the Navy. And Bob was director of Sheephead Bay back in New York, which is a maritime academy similar to West Point, and he was an executor on that operation. An interesting tale about the two of them. They were serving in the Pacific during the war, and they were both in Okinawa when the kamikazes broke out. And neither one of them were killed or injured, but they saw a lot of action.
And then you?
Well, then me. I was born in Staples, like the rest of them, and went to St. Ignatius High School. I went into the Marine Corps when I was 18. In the Marine Corps, I enlisted in San Francisco, went to a boot camp down in San Diego, and the week after we got out of boot camp, the Korean War broke out. We were shipped overseas after about a month training at El Toro Air Base. And so we went overseas. We landed at Incheon, and we were there for 2 years, and then we came home.
And you went over with your boy Boris, is that his name?
Boris, yeah.
And you're friends with him since you're a kid, right?
We went to grammar school together, kindergarten.
Kindergarten?
Yeah.
And so you guys, when you were 15 or 16, you took a train trip to Texas or something?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
That was younger.
But
and
that
it
wasn't Boris. That wasn't Boris.
Oh, that wasn't Boris?
That was Phil Lafebre, another friend of mine. And we rode the rails for about 6 weeks.
What did you do? Did you hawk your brother's horn in order to have some money to go on that little jaunt?
Yeah, to pay for our trip. I hawked my brother's clarinet, who he received from my grandmother. And they weren't very too happy with me.
So it sounds like wasn't Bob and Jack weren't the only troublemakers in the family.
No. And you rode the rails, and tell them what you did, how you guys survived.
Some of it I can't reveal. But one interesting story, though, is that we were in Phoenix, and we were working in a bowling alley, setting pins, and the owner came over and said to me, he says, "You've got to get him to be faster," talking about my friend, or he's going to get killed. And those pins, the old way flying around back then, the pins, you had to be quick. And Phil wasn't very quick, but he had other assets that helped us out, which I can't relate at this time.
But how old were you then? You were only 13?
About 13 or 14.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
And what about riding the rails when you said going through the desert that it was so cold on the outside part of the train?
On the oil tankers, they have the rail that goes around the outside of them. And so we got on this is before we went to Phoenix, on the way to Phoenix. We got in back of the fuel tank and sat on this board that ran around. And it was fairly nice weather when we left. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, it was freezing cold about there. We don't know if that thing was ever going to stop, that train. It finally stopped. And we got off.
And did you pick cotton?
I didn't pick cotton. It was not a very nice experience. Before the cotton, when we got into Phoenix, we hadn't eaten. And here were all these oranges, beautiful oranges. And we went over, we were going to start chowing down on these oranges. And they were the marmalade, maybe the marmalade of them. They were bitter oranges.
Oh.
But the cotton picking was a bad situation. when they started, they gave us a sack, and they said, you bring the sack back here, and we'll pay you then. So I worked all morning long on it, and I took the sack up, and I think I'd only gotten 37 cents, and they took a quarter of it back for my using the sack.
Oh, no.
So I didn't make any money on the sack. And we got out of Phoenix.
And so you gone for 6 weeks, and then you came back?
Yeah.
Was your mom and dad mad at you?
And my dad wasn't very happy. But he didn't get mad at me then. He was very nice about it.
I'm probably thankful to have you back.
No, I don't think so.
Oh. And what about your summer home?
We had a summer home in Woodacre, which is in Marin County.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to, as soon as school was out, we'd pack up and move over to the summer home. My father had built the home. It was a pretty nice place. So that's where we'd spend our summers, which was great.
Tell me about her father coming over on the ferry during the weekends. And
Well,
how
yeah,
you
there used.
learned to tie your shoe?
Oh, yeah, that story. When I was about, I don't know how old I was. Must have been about 10 or 12.
Or you must have been younger than that, probably 6
Yeah.
or 7.
My father used to commute from San Francisco to Woodacre during the week. And so that I used to walk down the station was about a mile away from our house. So I'd walk down and meet him. And so this one day I was excited because I tied my shoes for the first time myself. So I said to him, look, I tied my shoes today. And he says, well, what's the big deal about it? It's about time. He said, what exactly he said was, it's about time. I felt about 2 inches high.
And then, so his mom, Jenny, she's the one who's the only child. Grandma told us a story about how her siblings had all died in a well.
Yeah.
And was that in California?
I don't know. I don't know. I've heard the story, but I don't know where it was.
Was that Jenny?
That was Grandma's. No, that was Grandma's mother.
Yeah, Jenny was.
Jenny was your dad's mother. So
Right.
so what was Grandma's mother's name? Did you ever meet her?
And none of that family, except the Allens. How were the Allens?
Your mother's brothers.
Yeah, they were 2 brothers. No, 3 of them. Paul, Al, and Fran. There were 3 brothers of my mother. And they come and stay with us quite often. In fact, they stayed with us for some period of time.
Mm-hmm.
They were all great baseball fans, and they played baseball too. One of them played for the San Francisco Seals. But
Was that Al?
Al, he broke his leg in Alaska, and he couldn't play ball after that.
Hmm.
So, go down years.
So you had a pretty good childhood in San Francisco. I mean, with your dad working.
Fortunate. We were not well-to-do, but fortunately my father's job enabled him to provide for us.
And they're all were very successful in what they did in their lives.
Jack was sort of a bad boy.
But you know what? When he worked, he was a store manager at Safeway, and he was well behaved there.
Very capable.
Yeah.
There was a story I was going to tell you. Boris called me one day, just about a month ago, and he said, I had a dream last night, and then the names of 4 of your girlfriends from high school. I said, how in the hell can you remember this many years back 4 girlfriends of mine in high school? He says, I do, here they are. He named off these 4 girls that were from high school. I couldn't believe it. A couple of pretty good lookers.
That's funny. So you grew up with those guys, and then you joined the Marines at 18, and then you went to Korea. And tell a story about your duck hunting experience over there.
Oh, man. Well, I don't remember.
You shot a duck?
It was in the winter. It was ripping cold.
In Japan?
No,
Where was it?
in Korea.
Oh, Korea, excuse me.
It's way in the North Korea.
Busan? That's
And
name.
What?
Busan? Is that where
No,
it
it was
is?
north of there.
You're at Wonsan, right?
Yeah, Wonsan. I think it was Wonsan.
Yeah.
And I was walking down the beach, and I see these ducks out in the water. So all I had was a Thompson submachine gun. But I shot him, and I shot a duck. And so I took off my clothes. It was the middle of winter, you know. And I went out and I dove into the water, and it was just like somebody took a clamp and clamped my heart. It hurt so much, it was so cold. I was going to freeze and nothing flat, I guess. So I got out of there as far as quick as I could. There's a colonel standing on the beach. He took off his parka and he put me in the parka. But that was the dumbest thing I ever did.
So you were at Wonsan. They were at the air base in Wonsan, right?
Yeah.
And so during the Chosin Reservoir, when the Chinese came over, weren't they evacuating a lot of the soldiers, the wounded, to Wonsan?
We unloaded some of them,
On the airfield there?
yeah.
And so were you helping to evacuate those guys?
Yeah.
Bring those guys out? That must have been a pretty sketchy time.
A couple of stories there.
Mhm.
What was I going to say? You interrupted me.
But you had those. I remember you said you were fixing those homing beacons, and one pilot wanted.
Oh, yeah. When I came back from overseas, they made me an instructor on flying bombers. And so what they had R4Ds that had the windows all covered over, and then the instructor had a radar. And all the students had radar, so you could see how you do it. And so I missed the bomb. When I made my bombing run, I missed the target by 75 miles. But fortunately, the pilot knew me from overseas, so I didn't get any trouble, but I could have gotten into some trouble. Just another story of success.
So do you remember what was it like during the Chosin Reservoir thing when the Chinese came over? Do you remember when that happened?
Well, yeah, but all I remember is that unloading the wounded.
Unloading the wounded?
Yeah, and coming back. I was fortunate that I was in the air part.
The Marine Air Corps.
Yeah, and so I had one situation one time. I used to work on R4Ds, which homing devices for the pilots. The pilot would take off on a mission, and to get back to the base, you turn on this R4D, or not R4D, he'd turn on this A5, and it'd give him a beacon to find the base, his way back. So apparently I hadn't repaired this one right, and this lieutenant, irate, mad as hell, wanted to know who'd worked on this. My army, my fellow workers cooled him down so he didn't attack me, which he would have liked to, which he was entitled to.
Hmm. And so you got out of there, so you guys all evacuated out of Wonsan and went back to Pusan, right? And then you were there for what, another year or a year after that?
I don't know. We didn't go that far south, but we were there for another year. And then the second year of the war, we came back. That Christmas, remember that Christmas? They wanted to get everybody home by Christmas.
Hmm. And so when you came back here, what'd you do?
Went to work for Safeway.
As a bagger or checker or what?
Clerk.
Clerk?
Apprentice clerk.
In San Francisco?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. And it's the rest of its history, huh?
No.
Well,
You lived with Jack and Lotta then, huh?
You
yeah.
lived with Uncle Jack when you came back from the war?
Yeah.
In San Francisco?
Mill Valley.
And that's where you met Mom?
Not Mill Valley.
No, it's Safeway.
When I came back from overseas, I went to Arkansas.
Tennessee.
Tennessee as an instructor in radar. But that was just a little sidelight.
And then from Tennessee, you came back here, right?
Yeah.
He ran out of girlfriends in Tennessee.
No, there were some pretty girls.
And so that brings you to the Safeway thing. Okay, going back to you, Ma. So let's get you caught up to Safeway until you guys met at Safeway. So you were up in Eureka. You grew up there, and your grandmother and grandfather were who were they?
My mother's mother lived, she had lived in Canada and had 5 children. And her husband left to go to work in California, so somehow she came down here, but I don't know if they were divorced or just separated, I guess. So she lived with Lloyd, Uncle Lloyd, her son. And her youngest daughter, who was Fern, came and lived with my mother and dad. So we lived on J Street in San Francisco. And I had a brother who is 7 years older than me. And my father and my mother and Fern and I shared a bedroom. And I think, we didn't have anything as far as finances were concerned, but I really consider that I had a very happy childhood. My grandmother and grandfather of my father, on my father's side, lived nearby. They lived, I guess, about a half an hour away. And he worked in the woods, and they had a place out in the country. And they had a cow, and they had their garden, and they had chickens and rabbits, and mostly what I remembered there was, that's all we ate, chickens, rabbits, and fish, that we'd catch. And it was really happy time, just a happy, nice childhood. When the war happened, my folks came down to San Francisco because my father had worked in the woods up there, and I guess there wasn't a lot of work. So he came to San Francisco to work in the shipyards. What are they called? Whatever, the shipyards. So I went and lived with my grandmother and grandfather out in Falk, and my parents came down here. My brother, I think, lived with Uncle Lloyd. So I went to school out there, which was really fun, and it was really nice. I was probably about 1.5 to 2 miles from school, and it was a one-room schoolhouse that went from the 1st grade to the 12th grade, all in one room with one teacher. And in the back of the room, she had a potbelly stove, and you know, when it was cold, she would open up a can of tomatoes that she canned herself and put it on the stove, and then she'd give all of us kids this, you know, hot canned tomatoes, which I thought was great. Anyway, it was a fun time living out there. You know, my grandfather would go milk the cow, and I'd go with him, and they were from Finland, so they had a steam bath. And once a week, whether you needed it or not, you'd go out and take a steam bath and dump cold water on you to rinse the soap off. And then my grandmother used to wrap me up and put a robe on me and have me go in the house and sit in front of the wooden stove, because they didn't have electricity or running water. So I'd sit in front of the stove, and she'd have a big tin cup of cream that she would, you know, pull off the top of the milk, because I was skinny and she thought I needed that cream. So that, you know, it's really happy memories, really happy. And then we moved to San Francisco. Well, my folks were already there looking for a place. And then Lloyd, my Uncle Lloyd, picked up my brother and I and drove us to San Francisco. And I fell asleep in the car, and I remember my uncle waking me up to say that we were at the Golden Gate Bridge. And of course, yeah, I'd never seen that, but it was foggy. So San Francisco was nice. That was during the war, so that's when rationing came on, and you know, some people laugh, you know, about, you know, what you ate, you know, because I said one time that, you know, we'd cook rice, my mother would cook rice in milk, you know, and put butter on it, and you'd have that for dinner, and then sometimes she'd put berry syrup on it, and you'd have that for dessert. You know, I mean, that was just the way it was. You'd have rice, or you'd have potato soup, or macaroni and cheese, but, you know, you were never hungry, but it was all real inexpensive stuff. Meat was rationed, so you didn't have it. Shoes, leather was rationed. Sugar, coffee, all that stuff. Butter, and you couldn't buy that stuff. When it would come in the grocery store, you would have to have your stamp, and you would get, you know, however many stamps you had. If you just had one, you could get like whatever it was. I don't know, it was a pound of sugar or what, I don't know what it was. And you laughed because I said you'd have leather stamps too, because, you know, they had to have the leather for the soldiers, for the army. So you'd get maybe one pair of shoes a year, you know. So you think now what the kids have for shoes, but then that was good. And I know Leonard and I were talking about going barefoot during the summertime. And that's interesting, because as a kid, you don't think anything about it, you know. You went barefoot because, you know, it was fine. And Leonard happened to mention that you couldn't afford shoes. And that's probably really true. You couldn't afford shoes, so you went barefooted which was fine. You know, we didn't have any problem with it. And it was interesting living in San Francisco. You had streetcars. My parents never had a car, because they just took the streetcar back and forth wherever they needed to go. And it was a good time in San Francisco. You just didn't have some of the, bad stuff that goes on now. You sort of had freedom, to take, as a kid, 10 years old, I would take the streetcar down, to Market Street to go to the dentist then, by yourself. Or I'd go to my aunt's, she was a hairdresser, I'd go there. It was nice.
So Falk was up there by Eureka?
Falk, yeah. It's also called Eel River, but Falk was, it was, I don't know how far. It was not as far as Rio Dell. It's probably halfway between Eureka and Rio Dell. And then you'd go inland a little bit.
And so during the war, you were up there with your grandparents and your mom and dad were in
When
San
the war
Francisco.
started, because, my father went there because it was more of a chance to earn money in San Francisco, working the shipyards rather than, he worked in the lumber mill, Pacific Lumber.
Uh-huh.
Lumber mill.
And your grandmother on your mother's side was from Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the good part.
Now, your grandmother was from Canada too, right? Your great-grandmother was from Canada?
I don't think from Canada. I thought it was back east somewhere.
Your dad's mom was from Iowa, but I thought your mom's mom
Oh,
was from Colorado, or I don't know, I've seen letters.
is she the one that was killed in the well?
Her siblings were all killed in the well. Her 5 brothers and sisters were all killed in the well. And she was sole survivor, and her mother died in the well trying to save them, and then her father came home, and grandma told me he died of a broken heart.
Mm.
And so she was raised by her uncle, who put her in a convent to be raised by the nuns. And so she was raised by the Catholic nuns. And then she married somebody who her uncle didn't approve of, but I don't know anything about that. That must have been your grandfather on your mother's side.
Right.
And you never knew him, right?
Mm.
He was a lot older than her.
He was a lot older than her.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in San Francisco. You're in San Francisco, and then your mom had a restaurant?
Well, my father worked in the shipyards, and then he got a better job later on working as a longshoreman. So he worked as a longshoreman. My mother didn't work then. My brother was going to be drafted, so he quit high school. He was 18, but he quit high school and went into the Merchant Marines. And so he was gone, and that was kind of a sad time because, Christmas and everything it was all different without him there. And then we moved to another house, still in San Francisco. And I went to high school. My brother was back. He came back from the Merchant Marines and then was immediately drafted into the Army. Because Merchant Marines didn't count as a military, I guess, I don't know what. Anyway, so I was in high school, that was fine, everything was fine. I worked at a little corner drugstore right at the corner from where we lived in the soda fountain as a soda jerk, which was really fun. And that time, drugstores were small and they sold, magazines, and they always, and they gifts besides the drugs. And then so many of them had just a little counter, of a soda fountain. It was really fun. It was a great little job. Anyway, so I was 5 years old, I guess, and my father had a massive stroke. So they said that he would never work again. So here was my mother with myself and my little sister, and my brother was gone in the Army. and being told that my father would never work again. So she pooled all of her money and whatever they had and bought this little neighborhood restaurant. And she would get up early in the morning and walk down to the restaurant and get the steam table going. She did all the cooking. She made everything from scratch. And I was just graduating from high school, and I was awarded a scholarship to Gumps. And but I didn't take it because my mother had the restaurant, and so I wanted to work for her, which I did, and I never regretted that because, you know, that was really nice. But then my father, being such a determined person, wound up, he'd lay in bed and go like this constantly with a ball, just trying to work muscles back up, and he got where he could walk again, and he couldn't talk very well, because, but he'd swear a lot. And then he was able to go back to work. He went back as a longshoreman, and my mother kept the restaurant until she wound up having a heart attack, and so she sold the restaurant, and she didn't work after that. And they still lived in San Francisco. And then after that, I worked in another restaurant downtown in San Francisco.
We're getting closer.
Yeah, and then those people sold that restaurant, so I left and applied for a job at Bank of America, which I didn't get because I didn't pass the test. So I went and applied at Safeway, and they were opening a new store at Market and DuBose in San Francisco. And so I went to work there. And
Real close.
real close. And there was this fellow who worked there who, anytime I was a checker, and anytime you needed, you know, another checker, I'd call somebody, or somebody would call somebody, and this guy would come up, and he was so skinny, and he'd come up and he'd always be sweating, just dripping sweat, you know, always. And so he'd maybe check next to me, and he never knew produce. He never knew what it was. He's always asking me, you know, what's this? You know, what kind of lettuce is this? Or, you know, what kind of fruit is this?
Say something nice. It's being taped.
So we used to work until like, was it 10 o'clock at night? And on Friday nights, I think it was 11 o'clock. And I used to take the streetcar home, so I'd get off of work and take the streetcar home. So this one fellow there who was married, he said that, you know, he'd go my way, so he would drive me home because he didn't think I should take the streetcar. So that was fine. So he drove me a few times, and then one time he said to Ron, he says, "Hey, you go her way. Why don't you drive her home?" So Ron, says, "Okay." So I go to get in the car, and I bump my head. I was all embarrassed, and he starts driving, and he gets to almost the worst part of town. It was, at that time, it was like Haight and Fillmore. Fillmore Street was a bad part of town then. So he gets to this crossroads, and he says, "Well, this is where you can get out." He said, "Because I turn here." And I didn't know him that well. It scared the life out of me. But anyway, he wound up driving me home.
What a sweetie.
Yeah, wasn't he nice? So then we started dating, and you know, he used to get mad at me because when we were dating, they used to take all his fabulous produce, nothing wrong with it. They'd put it in these big, huge garbage cans and put it in the back room to go to the dumps. And so the nighttime manager at that time used to tell me, he says, "You know, this stuff is all good. If you want any of it, take it home." So I take the big barrel bag and I, you know, put whatever, tomatoes or oranges or bananas or whatever. and Ron would come in and he'd see me going through the garbage. And he never liked that at all. But we used to meet in the elevator quite a bit. Do a little
You have to make some sacrifices.
do a little smooching in the elevator. You know, so but that
That's
was
enough.
fun.
You blade it up. Oh,
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. So then our happy day was coming, huh? So we got
which one was that?
so we got married at we're 40th and Lawton,
Lawton.
San Francisco Catholic Church. And then we moved. Oh, and then you quit Safeway to go to work with Uncle or your sister's husband Lloyd.
Yeah.
He was an appraiser,
Hmm.
and so you were going to go work at the same company he had. So we moved over to Oakland, and that job didn't work out. So we had to move back to San Francisco, and you went back to Safeway, right?
Hmm.
And we moved real close to my parents. And then I was pregnant with Ronnie, so we were just a block from my parents. So Ronnie was born, and then I got pregnant with Mark. We're in the same little apartment that we painted and tiled and did everything to. So we moved again, and then we wound up buying our first house. We moved in there when Kurt was 2 days old. I came out of the hospital a day early so we could move in there. So we had three little tiny kids in this nice new house.
I was in San Bruno.
San Bruno, yeah, Rollingwood, San Bruno. So that was good. We lived there for how long? We had Kurt and Ross. That was it. Then you were transferred to from there for
Aptos.
Aptos, huh? So
We went to Rollingwood first, didn't
yeah, that was the first
You were rolling,
house.
but you see, during this time, you went into management at Safeway. So you're no longer a clerk, you were in management. And so you were an assistant manager in San Francisco?
we? Yes.
And then and when you moved to San Bruno, then they promoted you to manager, right? Was your first store as a manager Aptos?
It was West Portal.
You were
was your-
the youngest manager of Safeway.
And you were in West Portal was your first store?
Yeah.
How long were you there?
Not long, about a year, I think.
And then they sent you to Aptos?
West Portal. Then there's another store on 19th Avenue that I had managed that. And it's from there I went to Aptos to open a new store.
Huh. And so how was that? I mean, with your parents and all that, moving to Aptos. Was your family upset about that? Now your dad had passed away at this time.
Yeah. No, my mother was happy where she was. There was no problem there.
And she was in Walnut Creek.
Yeah.
And was your dad in Walnut Creek too?
No. My dad passed away when I was overseas.
Your dad passed away when I was pregnant with Kurt. That's when your dad passed away. That's why Kurt is named Kurt Joseph. Joseph after your dad. He was, how old was he when he died?
Oh, he wasn't. They
He was like 58, 59.
he had a stroke when I was overseas.
Yeah, that was it.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
But he got better from that.
Anyway, so
So then you moved to Aptos. You opened up the Aptos store. And how was that? Did you like living in Aptos?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun there.
mm-hmm.
This is yours.
Well, that's where We lived next door to the O'Neills, you know, the big O'Neill surfboards and wetsuits and all that. That's when they first started, and so we lived next door to them, and that was a lot of fun going to the beach. And you kids were little, and Bob O'Neill made you all wetsuits because the beach water was cold. That was really nice. Marcy, you had one, and that was really nice. We had a lot of good friends there. We were very Catholic there, real involved with the church and Knights of Columbus. And, it was a good time there, huh? And then you were transferred back up to San Mateo, right?
They promoted you to district manager up there, right?
Yes.
So that's when you became district manager when you went to San Mateo.
Yes, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what area I had at that time. Anyway, yeah, one of the San Mateo, and then from San Mateo I went over to Oakland, and then I had the districts, the Oakland district, and San Mateo, and then the Felton, what's that district?
No, it says right here. It's in Salinas, Monterey again.
Yeah.
That was after 10 years. Right, you were up there in San Mateo for about 10 years, right? Was it 10 years?
I guess about 10 years.
And then you got transferred again down there, and then you worked down there for another like 12 or 15 years, right?
Let's see.
1969 or 1970, you got transferred to San Mateo, and then what was it? It was 1976 because you got transferred back to San Mateo to Monterey. 1976, right? Because I went to Alaska in 1976. When I came back, you guys were gone, with no forwarding address and nothing.
Oh, I was trying to think there. I just know when we were in San Mateo, you kids were on the swim team then?
Mm-hmm.
San Mateo?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not in San Mateo.
No, in
Aptos, we were
in
on the swim
Aptos,
team.
you're on the swim team. Because they used to
Right?
take you to different places, and Salinas was one of the places I took you to on a swim meet.
Yeah, we went to Carrillo College on the swim team at Carrillo College all through all those years.
Then we lived in San Mateo, and then in San Mateo, Dad had rumors that he was going to be transferred, and it was like Hawaii or Texas or Salinas and I can't remember some of the others, and I said to him, I don't care where we go, I just don't want to go to Salinas, because I had taken you kids there on the swim tournament things. So, guess where we were transferred to?
To Salinas.
Salinas. But it worked out fine. So, that's where we still live. The kids in the meantime all grew up. Marcy and Todd were born in Santa Cruz, and then we moved to San Mateo, and Jenny was born in San Mateo. The rest of you were all born in San Francisco. That was about it. So here we are, still in Salinas.
So what about Bob O'Neill? I mean, he was the designer of the first modern wetsuit.
Right.
And what happened with you? You helped him with making patterns or something?
No, I was actually pretty good at laying out patterns, because I used to sew a lot. So I was pretty good at laying out patterns to save material. And his wife, Eileen, knew that. And so she used to say to him that I should lay out the patterns for him but I never did that. He did the wetsuits, and his brother Jack did the surfboards.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a falling out on that. And they separated, and Jack took over the O'Neill stuff, and Bob went on to, they bought a Foster Freeze, and then they bought apartments, and they wound up doing well. So it worked out fine for them.
Mm-hmm. So then now you guys, now Dad, you worked until 85, 86 or something like that, and then you
Yeah.
retired, and then Mom, you went to work.
Well, we were both retired. I mean, he was retired, and we didn't do anything for a while. You know, and then it was like, got to do something.
He was
and
doing, when did you start doing the woodworking, the signs and the little...
That
That's when
was
we got
about
this-
that time.
Yeah.
I mean, because he used to do this stuff, and I'd take it into this store in Carmel, and they'd take all the stuff that we made, and then one time they said that they were going to sell the store, and they knew that I was interested in it, so we wound up buying the store from them, Raffles in Carmel in the plaza. And that was really great, and I'm so glad we did that because it was so much fun. Dad used to come over there, and we had a basement, and he'd go down the basement and unpack stuff, and or get stuff ready for shipping, or do book work and stuff like that. So we used to call him Igor in the basement. He wasn't too good with the customers.
Not funny, don't laugh at her.
Anyway, that was really fun having the store. So we had it for, what was it, 13 years, 16 years, something like that. We wound up having 2. It was a lot of fun. It was nice having that. And then we decided, tourism was going down in Carmel. The Japanese quit coming there, and we weren't getting any tours, and then the big stores started coming in, and so little stores like ours, were kind of losing out. So we decided to, and then I started having some health problems, so that's how come we got rid of it. And then we retired for good.
You retired for you, and Dad, you were doing the a lot of the woodworking and all this stuff and helping out all this time.
Yeah, before.
Mm-hmm.
Making the cradles
I
and
enjoyed doing that.
chairs and signs and.
Yeah, and then you sold this, and then after that, you guys retired for good, and you just did the courier car thing for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that was pretty much it until now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Have we missed anything?
Have we missed anything?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. What?
So I mean, I don't know.
I think we've been super blessed. Super blessed.
I have anyway. I don't know about her.
No, we have been. We've been very, 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 very blessed. We've always, had enough and had 7 wonderful, 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 wonderful children who grew up to be very wonderful people. A lot of people can't say that, And we've been very happy. It hasn't all been peaches and cream, but it's been a lot of peaches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're getting into it.
So what do you think? What do you think? Looking back on it, what's the highest points of your life, and what's the lowest?
The lowest, of course, was losing our son Todd. That was the lowest. There's nothing worse than that. The highest, it's all been high for me. What about for you? It hasn't been a
There
highest.
were a few bumpy spots. No, you've been very fortunate. But I got to tell us a couple war stories for Scotty. The 7th Army was coming ashore at, not Busan, well, one of the northern parts of Korea. And we were had our foxholes. We were in the foxholes, and these tanks started coming ashore, 7th Army tanks. And they just hit the beach, and they set out on perimeter. So we'd annoy them the first few nights. We'd throw cans on top of the tanks. They'd go nuts. They'd be wheeling around, going crazy, being scared. And then another war story is at night they used to go out on patrols. So we're going out into the patrol, and I was the last guy in line, and I stepped into a hole. When I climbed out of the hole, the rest of the squad was already gone. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. But I fortunately ran ahead, and I did catch him. So there was no big story there. It was a little terrifying for a few minutes.
What about when you got shot at?
Yeah. But that's another example of stupidity. We were out just down on a regular patrol. But the group I was with, we were about 5 of us. We just had submachine guns. And submachine guns are great for night fighting, you know, where you're going to be close to the enemy. You got a quick range on your weapon, where you can move it fast. So, what was I going to say about this?
So you're on patrol with Thompsons and.
Oh yeah, so we got pinned down. There was snipers that started shooting at us, and we couldn't do anything. The area where we were, the only cover we had was where we were. And finally, we just outweighed the guy till he finally left. But it was just stupidity that you gotta know what you're doing. Submachine gun might be nice, close quarters, but not out in you're going to be fighting rifles.
And then another one, you were walking down a road and you saw the sparks going over your shoulder?
Oh, well, I was on guard duty in the air, by an airplane hangar. And the runways were there. And I was walking down the runway, and I just seen these sparks shoot up in front of me, and I realized that somebody's shooting at me. I got killed.
You said it scared you so much that, you know, you just realized that someone who's actually shooting at you, you almost felt like throwing
Yeah, well,
up.
we just got hit the beach that day, the day before. And one of my first assignments was this guard duty, just watching the airplanes. And right away, the bullets were flying up over my shoulder.
Oh, you think that was a Chinese shooting, or was it Koreans, or who was that?
I don't know. I never talked to them.
And then what about the gold teeth? Did you have a collection of gold teeth?
I don't talk about that.
But you did.
You may have.
Because you wanted to be a dentist, right? Any other stories?
No.
That's it, huh?
He has a lot of stories that he doesn't want to tell.
Well, the people who are going to watch this video are going to be like probably 30 years from now. And so there will be no repercussions. No one's gonna come back on you on it. I don't know. What would you say if you could talk to the grandkids, you know, Todd's kids when they're 30 years from now, when they're 30 years old? What would you want to say to them? I mean, what's important to you? What was important in your life?
I don't know. Lots of things. I don't know. I don't know what you'd say. I don't know. Lots of things are important.
Like when I was in Alaska and I came back, you guys all became Christians.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that went on for, I mean, you were in the full gospel, all that.
Mhm.
You know, how would that impact? That was probably the best years I think that I remember. You know, our family was probably the closest then, in those years.
You kids were always close, though. You know, when you're little, you were always close. You always were. Maybe that was close in a different way. I don't know.
Well, anything else you could
I
think
guess
of?
I'd say, boy, sounds corny, but love each other because life is short. I mean, I feel like I'm about 35 now, and here I'm 82. I mean, life goes by quick. So, all of you should say something, you know, for your families, for when you have children and everything.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm sure Marcy will. I don't think anybody cares about Jerry.
He's been sleeping the whole time.
All right, I guess that's it, huh? Is that enough?
No?
Wrap it
What
up.
about, one thing I want to ask about is your mom. I remember your mom, and she was like
a saint.
she was a very nice person.
She was a very nice person.
Yeah.
Very nice person.
She died pretty
Mom
young.
was better.
Well, I mean, the two, both your, I didn't know your father, but I know your mother was very,
Strict.
she was strict, but she was nice.
She
wasn't
nice.
mean. She was strict, but she was very nice.
We became extremely close friends. We'd sit there and talk for hours when she'd come down. I had very highest respect for her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was a perfect mother-in-law, really.
But she wasn't a mean person at all.
No, not at all. She was strict. She was strict with children, or with you kids. But
Yeah,
she
but
had
she
to
wasn't
be.
strict in a bad way. I mean, she made us eat cooked carrots. Big deal. You know what I mean? But she wasn't. I don't have any bad memories of her at all.
Mhm.
Did she call you a cold fin?
Yeah, she did. When that was her generation of everybody was something. Gloria was what was it? Hot. What was Gloria? Gloria's Italian. She was I forget, like the emotional Italian, and of course I was the cold Finn, and I don't know. She
Al
was.
married a Finn too, didn't
Yeah, his uncle Al married a Finnish girl, woman who. All I remember about her is that she made turkey during Thanksgiving and put the stuffing in it the night before, and everybody got sick. I think they got a divorce, probably after the turkey deal.
he?
But my mother was, she really was. She was a very homebody
Got a tick.
person,
Yeah.
yeah, from
Keep talking.
golfing in the bushes. Very good-hearted, she would have, anybody came to the house, her house was always open, take people in, people could always, I don't care if 5 people stopped by to have dinner, she didn't have it. She would somehow magically make all the food, be enough. She'd open up cans of fruit or whatever. She always made enough. She's just a very good-hearted, very good mother, very good person. My father was a little strict. I have great admiration for him, but I guess a lot of people think he was mean, but he wasn't. He was.
My father was a great guy. He was tough as nails, though. He was an ornery bugger.
He always said he could make anything, he could do anything.
He was a mechanic on elevators, how he started. And he finally ended up as supervisor. But anything electrical or mechanical of any kind, he could do it. He just had that ability.
You said he built your summer home, so.
He really did.
Good.
Indoor seating too. Not like some people I know.
Okay, that's a joke about outdoor toilets, because my grandparents, they didn't have running water, as I said, and no electricity, so they had an outdoor toilet. And a lot of people had them then, but most of them only had one hole in them for, to sit on. But ours was a 3-holer. It was really classy because they had a small one
You talk about
for me.
influence. There it is.
And it's no joke about having a catalog in the outdoor toilet that you use for toilet paper. I mean, that was just the way it was.
Nice.
Yeah. I have a flushing toilet now.
Yeah, very well, very nice. You did very good. So I also too about Uncle Ben. I talk about him a little bit. I mean, I remember him with fond memories of. He was a
Yeah.
good sense of humor and
Yep.
always seemed like he's pretty happy.
Can I tell you about Ben?
Go ahead.
Lyla and I have been dating ourselves for how long?
No, not very long. We've been dating not very long.
So I pulled up in front of her house and parked the car, and another car came up and parked just right in front of me. And this fella gets out of his car, leans over his front bumper and sick to his stomach. And she says, "That's my brother." That's how I met her brother.
Well, I thought he was a wonderful person. As I say,
He was. He was a
70
great
years
guy.
older than me, but
He was a nice guy.
even as
Couldn't fish very well.
as when I was a little kid, he always took care of me, and he was just a real good brother. And
Well, tell him about the time.
coming home from Sue's wedding.
Yeah.
So baby Sue was getting married up in Santa Rosa, so my brother and Ron and I were going up there to the wedding. It was an in-home wedding or reception. So we went up there, and there were a lot of people there that I hadn't, and my brother hadn't seen for years and years, and we were visiting with them and really enjoying them and everything. And so it was time to go, and Dad's always been one that looks at the black cloud first, and so he said, "We better get going. We're going to get in all the traffic." Well, we're talking to these people and enjoying and everything, and so we're getting ready to say goodbye, but we're saying goodbye to a lot of people. So we go out in the front porch, and he takes off in the car, just drives off, and everybody says, "Where's Ron going?" I don't know. Maybe he's going to get gas. I don't know what he's doing. So he was so mad he took off. So he comes back, and he takes my brother and I. We get in the car, and he starts in complaining about how inconsiderate we are, how he wanted to leave and we weren't getting ready to go or anything. And my brother says, "Well, don't get mad at her. It's not her fault." He said, "It's my fault." And so Ron starts in railing at him. "Well, if it's your fault, then you're inconsiderate. You're the one." And my brother says, "Oh, just stop the car and let me out." And Dad goes, "I'm not going to let you out." So we drive all the way to San Francisco. He drops my brother off at his house. We go to our house. He walks in the door, picks up the phone. He calls my brother and he says, "I've changed my mind. You can get out."
different version of that.
Did you? Anyway, my brother was an extremely nice person, and he loved it when, he really loved Ron, and he was happy when we had the 3 boys, and he used to call them Ronnie, Mark, and Kurt. He called you Sam, Luke, and Clem, and he used to just really enjoy you kids. That was really nice. So we'd go up and see him and go camping with him when the boys were little. And Marcy, I think we only went once after Jenny was born, and we never went again after that. And then he died when he was 45 of a heart attack.
And when Aunt Trudy was born, he resented the fact that she was born because your mother had such a rough life.
Yeah, my mother was 38 or 39 when Trudy was born, and it had been a difficult time, and he just didn't think that, it would be. He thought it would be a big burden on my mother, so he always kind of resented Trudy because he just thought it was going to be a burden on my mother. As it was, I've said many times, it was a blessing for my mother because my father had the stroke, and so she had Trudy, and that took her mind on something happy, and I always thought Trudy was a blessing to her. But so Trudy and my brother never quite got along. So you can ask Trudy what she thinks about it, and she would say something entirely different from me.
Well, and Dad, I want to ask you about his Uncle Jack. Some of his stories. I mean, because for me, Uncle Jack was a big influence because that's where I got my start hunting. Because I went up there and took hunter safety up there through him, and that's something that they like to do.
He was super individual. The story I'd like to tell is about, he was a very active Marine, very proud to be a Marine, but he had a college degree, and so when the draft inducted him, he had all the typing ability and all this stuff for the office crew. So they put him in the office down in Camp Pendleton. And he was very unhappy being back there. Anyway, about a couple of years later, when he's discharged, he was going to the Marines Memorial Club, and he had a snoot full. And coming down on the elevator, there was a recruiter, and the recruiter was telling Jack, to join the reserves, you don't have to go to a meeting, you don't have to do anything, but you'll still be a Marine. Jack says, okay, sign me up. And a month later, the Korean War broke out. And he was the first one called up. But he didn't have to go overseas. They sent him back to the office. He was going crazy that he wanted to go overseas.
So he was a typist.
Yeah.
That's funny. Jerry, any questions?
I think you should do this again with more interesting little stories, Really kind of fun.
Like what? What do you have in mind?
Well, it's kind of late.
Yeah, it's kind
You
of.
want to do another one later?
Yeah, I think you should. With some of the fun stories.
Okay, well, we got this.
Jack shooting his front tooth out.
Allergies.
Yeah, so put that back on Todd. So Uncle Jack, I remember when Uncle Jack's funeral, it was all sad and everybody's sad, and Lynn gets up and then they're all choked up and everything, and you get up there and you go, I remember Uncle Jack shut out my front tooth for the first time. And everybody's laughing and thought it was funny, and to come to realize that he really did shoot out your front tooth?
Yeah.
I thought that was a joke.
But I'd have to speak at a meeting. Sometimes I'd be introducing Jack, and that's my brother. And Jack was smaller than I was, so it was sort of a joke to start with. But once, I thought.
About him shooting out your tooth?
Oh, yeah, well, now he shot out my tooth. He knocked my front teeth through my upper lip.
Later, many years later.
He
huh?
punched you?
No,
He made me in the surf. We were wrestling in the surf.
in Aptus.
Naptus, yeah. That's just below the navel. No, there was another one too.
Another navel or what?
No. Jack, there were three things. I can't think of the third one now. But it always, because all the people knew Jack was a wild man,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so everybody got a kick out of that. But he was really a great person.
Here, and knocked the teeth right through. And we just moved there, so we didn't have a doctor or anything. And of course, I don't think we went to Dr. Weiss then. I don't remember who. Anyway, so that was,
I went to,
that was the initial thing of Jack.
Tell the first time that you met Uncle Jack.
First time that I met
You met him?
That I met him?
Yeah.
You must have thinking of somebody else.
No, didn't you go into a bar with Dad and Uncle Jack?
That was when
no, that
Lotta
was
met
me.
him. When Lotta met Dad.
Oh, Aunt Lotta met Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Well, Jack and I had trouble once in a while. I sneak some of his clothes. So I was just 18. And where the Fox Theater was now, there was a bar alongside of the Fox Theater in San Francisco. And I went in to have a drink. And who the hell was sitting at the end of the bar but Jack and Lotta? And I had his new cashmere on. I thought, oh, Jesus, he's gonna kill me. And he saw me, and I saw him, and we exchanged looks, so I knew that my life was shortened. I was gonna get killed in about a half. So what he did, he was really nice. He says, "Can I buy you a drink?" You know, which I thought was very understanding. But the worst, I'm sure, was yet to come.
Were there ever repercussions for that?
No, I don't remember ever being punished. But it's just funny, how did you ever think the odds of that happening are?
No, Aunt Lotta says the story. I guess it was her that told me the story, but it was. She says she's in there with Uncle Jack in a bar, and you come in there at the other side of the bar and stand there, and you guys didn't even acknowledge each other
Right.
at first, and Aunt Lotta, Uncle Jack goes, "Aunt Lotta, that's my brother."
That's my little brother. My little brother.
Yeah. And Aunt Lotta's like, "It's not a real warm family." He might have mentioned that you're wearing his sweater.
Oh, God. Cashmere sweater yet.
Cashmere.
That's funny.
Yeah.